Nobody warned you about this. You learned attraction wrong from the start. Every piece of advice you absorbed told you the same thing. Try harder. Show more. Prove yourself. Be consistent. Be available. Be the guy who never leaves her wondering. So you did exactly that. You texted back fast. You planned dates carefully. You made your interest obvious. You thought clarity was kindness. You believed effort would be rewarded. And when she pulled away anyway, you blamed yourself. You assumed you weren't tall enough, funny enough, successful enough. You picked yourself apart searching for the flaw. But the flaw was never inside your worth. The flaw was inside your approach. You were doing too much of something you couldn't even see. Something she felt before she could name. Something that made wanting you nearly impossible no matter how good you looked on paper. Here is what nobody explains. Attraction is not a reward. It cannot be earned through availability. It cannot be purchased with attention. It does not care how many times you showed up or how perfectly you planned the evening. Attraction is a response that happens inside her. And that response has nothing to do with what you gave. It has everything to do with what you stopped needing. The men who understand this seem to break every rule. They reply slowly. They stay calm when things are uncertain. They never chase clarity. They never over-explain. They never flood the silence with reassurance. And somehow women lean toward them. Not because these men are cold. Not because they play games. But because they carry something different. A stillness that most men destroy the moment they start trying to be chosen. You have been adding when you should have been subtracting. Every extra message you sent carried invisible weight. Every explanation you offered filled space that her feelings needed. Every reassurance you requested told her that your stability depended on her response. None of it felt wrong to you. All of it felt heavy to her. This is the trap. Good intentions create bad results when they come wrapped in need. She does not experience your effort as care. She experiences it as pressure she did not ask for. And pressure kills desire faster than distance ever could. The shift she needs to feel cannot be manufactured through action. It sparks when something inside you settles. When you stop outsourcing your peace to her attention. When your mood no longer rises and falls based on her replies. When she senses that you are complete whether she participates or not. That is the moment everything changes. Not because you performed confidence. Because you stopped performing need. Most men will spend years adding ingredients to a recipe that never required them. They will pile on gestures and words and presence. They will believe that more is always the answer. But more was never the answer. Less was. And that is the invisible mistake almost no one corrects until it is already too late. She does not fall for what you give. She falls for what you do not require from her. This truth sounds impossible until you see it play out. You watch a man who barely tries to receive attention you cannot earn no matter how hard you work. You see someone stay calm while you scramble. You notice him walking away relaxed while you stay up analyzing every word she said. And you wonder what he knows that you missed. The answer is simple. He stopped needing her response to feel whole. That single difference changed everything about how she experienced him. Intensity does not create attraction. Neither does volume. Neither does speed. You can reply within seconds every single time and still feel her pulling away. You can plan extraordinary dates and still watch her interest fade. You can say all the right words and still hear her say she does not feel it. Because none of those things touch what actually moves her. What moves her is containment. The quiet sense that you exist fully without her validation. Not cold. Not distant. Not pretending. Just settled somewhere deep inside yourself. When you carry that stillness, your presence registers differently. Your words land without urgency. Your attention arrives without hunger. Your interest feels offered instead of pushed. And she notices immediately. Not because she analyzed you. Because her nervous system relaxed the moment pressure disappeared. That relaxation opens a door most men never find. It creates room. Room for her curiosity to spark without being forced. Room for her imagination to wander without interruption. Room for desire to build at its own pace instead of being rushed before it was ready. This explains the pattern you have witnessed 1,000 times. The moment you stopped refreshing your messages, her replies came faster. The moment you stopped explaining yourself, she asked more questions. The moment you stopped gripping the outcome, she leaned closer. It defied every instinct you had. Logic told you that effort produces results. But attraction never followed logic. It followed contrast. It followed shifts. It followed the feeling that something changed beneath the surface even when nothing obvious happened above it. You create that contrast the instant you become fully present without becoming emotionally dependent. She feels the difference between a man who wants her and a man who needs her to feel okay. Wanting feels like an invitation. Needing feels like a trap. One creates space. The other collapses it. One lets her breathe. The other makes her responsible for your air. And she will always move toward the man who lets her breathe. This is not about acting uninterested. Acting gets exposed within minutes. This is about actually returning to yourself. Actually finding your center. Actually knowing that her response changes nothing about your worth. When you reach that place for real, she senses it immediately. And that single shift sparks more attraction than 100 perfect gestures ever could. You never meant to exhaust her. Every message you sent came from a genuine place. Every quick reply felt like proof that you cared. Every follow-up question seemed like healthy communication. You believed you were being thoughtful, attentive, present. But something was happening beneath the surface that you could not see. She was slowly drowning under a weight you kept adding without realizing it existed. And by the time she pulled away, you had no idea your kindness had become her burden. Here is what she experienced while you thought you were connecting. Every time you responded before she finished processing, she felt rushed. Every time you sent a second message before she answered the first, she felt pressure building. Every time you explained yourself to fill an uncomfortable pause, she lost space to feel anything on her own. You were not giving her attention. You were giving her responsibility. The responsibility of managing your emotional state. The responsibility of reassuring you constantly. The responsibility of making sure you felt wanted enough to stay calm. None of this registered as malicious. It registered as heavy. There is a specific kind of fatigue that comes from being someone else's emotional anchor. She could not name it. She only knew that talking to you started feeling like work instead of play. Your conversations required something from her that other interactions did not. And slowly, without drama, without explanation, she started needing distance just to breathe again. This is the part you missed entirely. When you chase confirmation, you do not appear loving. You appear unstable. When you need to know where you stand every few hours, you signal that your internal world depends on her participation. When you fill silence because it makes you uncomfortable, you steal the quiet space her attraction needed to grow. You think you are building connection. You are actually collapsing it under the weight of your own unmet needs. The moment you remove that weight, everything shifts. She stops bracing for your next message. She stops calculating how to respond without triggering your anxiety. She stops managing you and starts noticing how she actually feels. Conversations become lighter. Her replies become more natural. She leans forward slightly because nothing is pushing her back anymore. You did not add something impressive to make this happen. You removed something exhausting. You stopped making her responsible for your peace. You stopped treating her attention like the only thing holding you together. You finally let her exist in the connection without carrying you through it. This is not about texting less to seem cool. This is about understanding what your presence actually costs her when it arrives wrapped in need. She wants to want you. But she cannot want someone she has to constantly stabilize. The moment you start regulating yourself, she stops working overtime. And in that relief, something opens. Something she forgot was possible. Space to desire you instead of manage you. You heard that distance creates attraction and completely misunderstood what it meant. You thought silence was a weapon. A trick you could deploy whenever interest started fading. So you waited extra hours before responding. You pretended to be busy when you were staring at your phone. You manufactured unavailability hoping it would trigger her to chase. And maybe it worked for a moment. Maybe she reached out once or twice. But then she disappeared entirely. Because she felt the game underneath your silence. And games repel faster than neediness ever could. Here is what nobody clarified. Women do not respond to distance. They respond to groundedness. These are completely different things wearing similar masks. Distance without foundation is just avoidance dressed up as strategy. She reads through it instantly. She senses the anxiety hiding behind your delayed replies. She feels the resentment lurking inside your sudden unavailability. Manufactured mystery creates manufactured interest. And manufactured interest evaporates the moment real emotion gets tested. Genuine groundedness operates on another level entirely. It does not require performance. It does not calculate timing. It simply exists because you return to your own life with actual investment. Your focus shifted back to your goals. Your energy poured into your own growth. Your attention landed on things that fulfilled you before she existed. And from that centered place, your presence transformed without you trying to transform it. This is when something powerful happens. Your silence stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like peace. She notices that your replies come when they come. Not strategically delayed. Not desperately fast. Just natural. Aligned with someone living a full life instead of someone orbiting hers. That subtle shift changes how every interaction lands. She begins wondering instead of assuming. She starts feeling instead of analyzing. The space you left behind becomes louder than constant contact ever was. Not because you engineered it. Because you genuinely filled your life with something beyond her attention. That fullness radiates through everything. Your words. Your timing. Your energy. Even your silences carry a different texture when they come from abundance instead of tactic. When you stop chasing emotional certainty, you stop broadcasting desperation. When you release the need to control how connection unfolds, natural rhythm returns. The dynamic rebalances itself without force. She stops feeling hunted. You stop feeling frantic. And somewhere in that calm, curiosity replaces obligation. This only works when your distance comes from self-respect. Not strategy. Not bitterness. Not fear disguised as indifference. When you pull back because your own life genuinely requires your attention, she feels the difference immediately. Your presence becomes something chosen rather than something compulsive. And chosen presence carries weight that desperate availability never touches. Stop trying to make pulling back into a technique. Start making your own life magnetic enough that pulling back happens naturally. When your world becomes full, your silence becomes powerful. Not because silence itself holds magic. Because fullness behind silence changes absolutely everything. You thought showing her how much she affected you would deepen attraction. You believed that letting her see your mood rise when she responded proved the connection was real. You assumed vulnerability meant showing her that your happiness depended on her presence. But you had it completely backwards. What felt like openness to you felt like obligation to her. And obligation is where desire goes to die quietly without anyone noticing until it is already gone. She does not want to be the reason you feel complete. This sounds harsh until you understand what that role actually requires. When her attention determines your emotional state, she becomes responsible for maintaining it. When her reply decides whether your day feels good, she carries weight she never agreed to lift. When your confidence fluctuates based on her interest level, she stops seeing a partner and starts seeing a project. And nobody feels attracted to a project they did not sign up to fix. There is a specific heaviness that comes from being someone else's primary source of emotional stability. She might not identify it consciously. She just knows that interactions with you leave her slightly drained. She starts choosing her words more carefully. She begins measuring her responses to avoid triggering your insecurity. She edits herself constantly. And slowly the connection stops feeling like connection. It starts feeling like management. Like caretaking. Like labor she cannot clock out from. This is why emotional independence changes everything instantly. When you carry your own stability, you communicate something without speaking a single word. You tell her that you want her presence but do not require it for your peace. You show her that your world remains full whether she participates or not. You demonstrate that choosing you is an opportunity rather than a rescue mission. An opportunity feels completely different from obligation. She stops bracing for your reaction whenever she needs space. She stops wondering if her honesty will shatter your confidence. She stops performing interest to keep you stable. And in that freedom, something opens that could not exist before. Space to actually feel what she feels. Space to want without pressure. Space to choose without guilt weighing down every decision. This is what most men never realize. You cannot make someone want you by showing them how badly you need to be wanted. Need does not inspire desire. Need inspires responsibility. And responsibility is the opposite of attraction no matter how much love exists alongside it. She might care about you deeply. She might feel connected genuinely. But if your emotional well-being sits on her shoulders, care slowly replaces chemistry. The moment you become your own source of stability, you remove a burden she was never meant to carry. You stop asking her to complete you. You arrive already complete, already settled, already okay. And that version of you creates space for her to want freely. Choice lives in that space. Desire lives in that space. Everything you wanted lives in that space you finally stopped crowding. You needed to know where you stood. The uncertainty was eating you alive. So you asked questions designed to produce clarity. You checked in frequently to confirm things were still good. You requested reassurance wrapped in casual language hoping she would not notice the desperation underneath. But she noticed. She always noticed. And every time you reached for confirmation, you pushed her further from the certainty you were chasing. Here is the brutal truth. Seeking reassurance does not demonstrate care. It broadcasts doubt. Not doubt about her. Doubt about yourself. Doubt about your own value. Doubt about whether this connection can survive without constant maintenance. And doubt spreads like infection. The moment you signal uncertainty about your worth, she begins questioning it too. Your anxiety becomes a lens she cannot unsee. Every interaction now passes through the filter you created by needing too much confirmation too frequently. Certainty cannot be captured through questioning. The more you grab for it, the faster it slips away. You ask if everything is okay and suddenly she wonders if it is not. You probe for validation and suddenly she questions why you need so much. You request confirmation and suddenly she realizes your stability depends entirely on her answer. That realization does not inspire attraction. It creates pressure she never asked to carry. There is another path entirely. One that requires something most men resist with everything they have. Trust. Not trust in her. Trust in yourself. Trust that you can exist inside uncertainty without needing it resolved immediately. Trust that your worth remains intact whether she confirms it or not. Trust that whatever happens next will not destroy you even if it disappoints you. That kind of self-trust creates an entirely different emotional climate. When you stop demanding certainty, feelings finally have room to develop naturally. Emotions surface at their own pace instead of being interrogated into premature clarity. She stops feeling like every conversation is a test she must pass. She stops measuring words to avoid triggering your insecurity. She breathes. She relaxes. And in that relaxation she starts accessing what she actually feels instead of managing what you need her to feel. Attraction cannot be convinced into existence. It must be allowed. And allowance only happens when you stop interfering with constant requests for confirmation. When you stop needing to know exactly where things stand every single day. When you stop asking questions that your nervous system demands answered before it will calm down. That stillness creates space. That space permits genuine emotion. And genuine emotion builds attraction more effectively than any reassurance ever could. The man who sits comfortably inside uncertainty communicates something rare. He shows emotional capability through action rather than words. He demonstrates stability without advertising it. He proves that his internal world does not collapse when external validation disappears. And that proof registers immediately. She feels it before she understands it. She trusts it before she can explain why. That wordless trust is where real attraction begins. Desire cannot be forced into a corner and expected to grow. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. The harder you push for closeness, the more resistance you create. You thought persistence demonstrated commitment. You believed that staying close proved your intentions were serious. But desire never responded to pressure the way loyalty does. Desire needs room to wander. Room to wonder. Room to miss what is not constantly present. And you kept filling every inch of that room until nothing could breathe inside it. Something shifts the moment you genuinely release your grip. Not pretend to release it. Not perform detachment while secretly monitoring every response. Actually let go. Actually stop tying your piece to her next move. Actually return to yourself without one eye still watching for her reaction. When that release happens for real, something unexpected follows. She starts giving what you stopped demanding. Not because you manipulated the outcome. Because you removed the invisible wall that was blocking it. She reaches out without prompting. She asks questions without being chased. She invests without pressure pushing her forward. And you wonder why this never happened when you were trying so hard. The answer is simple. Trying created resistance. Releasing dissolved it. Your effort was building walls you could not see. Your letting go finally dismantled them. This works even when everything seems to be falling apart. When she feels distant. When her responses grow shorter. When uncertainty clouds every interaction. Chasing clarity in those moments magnifies the imbalance. Demanding explanation adds tension to an already fragile dynamic. But remaining centered while distance exists demonstrates something words cannot capture. It shows that uncertainty does not break you. It proves that her hesitation does not determine your stability. And that proof lands deeper than any conversation could reach. She feels your steadiness against her own fluctuation. Your calm becomes a reference point when her emotions shift unpredictably. She stops wondering if you can handle difficulty because you are already handling it. Not through grand gestures. Through quiet presence that does not crumble when circumstances turn uncomfortable. That reliability creates safety. And safety opens doors that pursuit keeps slamming shut. Stop treating attraction like a problem that requires solving. Stop approaching connection like a negotiation that demands constant monitoring. Let things exist without needing them resolved immediately. Let her feelings develop without requiring progress reports. Let uncertainty sit beside you without treating it like an enemy that must be defeated. That allowance changes everything. Desire moves toward space. It retreats from crowding. Every attempt to lock it down pushes it further away. Every moment you allow it freedom draws it closer. This is not strategy. This is how emotional reality operates beneath all the stories we tell about romance. She cannot want what is constantly pushed upon her. She can only want what feels freely offered. So offer freely. Then step back. And watch what room creates when you finally stop stealing it. Trusting her was never the real challenge. You could decide to believe her words. You could choose to accept her actions at face value. You could convince yourself that she meant everything she said. But none of that touched the deeper issue hiding underneath. The issue was never about trusting her. The issue was about trusting yourself. And that kind of trust requires something most men spend their entire lives avoiding. You must believe that you will survive any outcome. Not just tolerate it. Survive it fully intact. You must know deep in your bones that rejection will not destroy the core of who you are. You must accept that disappointment might arrive and still not shatter your foundation. This is the trust that actually transforms everything. Not faith in her consistency. Faith in your own resilience. Faith that whatever happens next will not erase your worth or steal your peace permanently. This kind of self-trust feels terrifying because it removes control completely. You cannot manage her responses anymore. You cannot engineer outcomes through careful behavior. You cannot protect yourself by monitoring every signal and adjusting accordingly. You simply stand in your own value and let circumstances unfold without interference. That vulnerability is exactly what most men run from their entire lives. And running from it is exactly what keeps attraction at a distance. When you finally stop running, something remarkable happens. Women stop feeling like puzzles requiring solutions. Their behavior stops needing constant interpretation. Mixed signals stop demanding obsessive analysis. You simply observe what happens and respond honestly without spiraling into meaning-making that exhausts everyone involved. That simplicity is liberating. Not just for outcomes. For your entire experience of connection itself. You stop negotiating your worth through interaction. You stop measuring value based on her level of interest. You stop shrinking boundaries hoping flexibility will earn affection. You stand in what you deserve and let alignment happen naturally. Some connections deepen. Others fade without drama. Neither outcome destabilizes you because your foundation was never built on her response in the first place. Here is what nobody tells you until much later. Even when a specific woman walks away, you still win. You win because you did not abandon yourself chasing her approval. You did not betray your own standards to feel temporarily wanted. You did not sacrifice your calm on the altar of potential that was never guaranteed. That self-respect accumulates over time. It compounds invisibly. It changes how you carry yourself in rooms. It shifts how you speak without thinking about it. It alters how you choose partners rather than waiting to be chosen. Women sense this shift before understanding what they are sensing. They feel the solidity underneath your presence. They notice that desperation no longer hides behind your words. They recognize something rare without being able to name it specifically. That recognition sparks attraction faster than any technique ever designed. Because you finally became someone who trusted himself completely. And complete self-trust is magnetic beyond anything strategy could manufacture. He did nothing extraordinary. That was the strangest part. No grand gestures. No perfectly crafted messages. No impressive performances designed to capture her attention. He simply existed in his own completeness without requiring anything from her participation. And somehow that ordinary presence became the thing she could not stop thinking about. Long after conversations ended. Long after distance grew. He remained in her mind. Not because he tried to stay there. Because he never tried at all. This is what lingers with a woman when everything else fades. Not the man who impressed her most. Not the one who pursued hardest. Not the one who made the biggest promises. The man who stays with her is the one who felt whole without her validation. Settled without her reassurance. Complete without her attention filling some empty space inside him. That completeness registered differently than everything else she experienced. It felt like relief. It felt like safety. It felt like freedom she forgot existed. She carried no pressure around him. No weight of managing his emotional state. No responsibility for making him feel worthy. No exhausting awareness that his mood depended entirely on her next response. She was simply free. Free to want or not want. Free to move closer or step back. Free to feel whatever she genuinely felt without guilt distorting everything. And in that freedom something opened that could not exist anywhere else. Most men will never understand what their presence actually costs when it arrives wrapped in need. They experience themselves as caring and attentive. She experiences them as heavy and draining. But this man felt different from the first moment. His attention came without invisible invoices attached. His interest arrived without pressure hidden underneath. His presence asked nothing while offering everything. That distinction made him impossible to forget. This is the truth that takes years to reach for most men. What works instantly is not technique. Not strategy. Not carefully calculated behavior designed to trigger specific responses. What works is alignment. Complete alignment between words and actions and emotional posture. When all three emerge from the same grounded place, people feel it immediately. No confusion. No mixed signals. No noise requiring interpretation. Just clarity arriving without pressure attached. The man who carries this stops questioning what to say or when to say it. He stops rehearsing conversations before they happen. He stops analyzing interactions after they end. He shows up honestly, calmly, without urgency contaminating everything. And women feel that authenticity instantly because it demands nothing from them. It simply exists, offered freely, received optionally. The final irony completes itself. The more you trust yourself to be okay without specific outcomes, the more outcomes align with what you wanted originally. Not through manipulation. Through space. Attraction finally had room to do what it does naturally. And when it did, everything felt effortless. Not forced. Not manufactured. Not fragile. What women need to start wanting you was never something to add. It was something to remove. Needing. Grasping. Chasing. When those disappear, what remains is simply you. And that version is enough. You have been searching for the missing piece outside yourself this entire time. Looking for the right words. The perfect timing. The strategy that finally unlocks everything. But the missing piece was never outside. It was buried underneath all the things you kept adding. The need to be chosen. The hunger for validation. The desperate chase for certainty that was never yours to capture. Today something can shift if you let it. Not tomorrow. Not after more preparation. Right now. In this moment where you stop performing and start existing. Where you stop chasing and start standing. where you release the grip that has been suffocating every connection you tried to build. The man who does not need the outcome becomes the man who is finally ready for it. That paradox holds the entire secret. Stop trying to be wanted. Start being someone who wants himself first. That version of you does not chase desire. Desire finds him. Every single time. Everything changes when you stop asking to be chosen and simply become someone worth choosing freely. If this reached something inside you that needed reaching, subscribe now. Hit that button before distraction pulls you away. Join the community of men who are done performing and ready to start becoming. New insights drop regularly. Each one designed to take you deeper into the man you were meant to be. Subscribe. Stay close. And watch what happens when you finally get out of your own way.